Disrespect in public is one of the most painful experiences a person can endure, especially when it is done intentionally and in front of others. It cuts deep because it is not just an attack on someone's appearance or presence, but a calculated attempt to strip away their dignity. In this story, the Black CEO's first challenge began the moment he walked into that room. The stares followed him, not out of admiration or curiosity, but with the cold weight of judgment. He was sized up, not for his intelligence, achievements, or the empire he had built, but for the color of his skin and the way he dressed that day. Some saw him as someone who didn't belong, someone they thought could be ignored, dismissed, and looked down upon. The voices around him carried whispers, half-hidden laughter, and sneering comments disguised as casual jokes. The atmosphere was heavy with arrogance, as if they had already decided who he was and what he deserved before he had even spoken a single word. Public disrespect works this way. It is designed to humiliate the target by drawing the attention of others, creating an audience for cruelty. It strips a person of the right to simply exist without judgment, and instead paints them as an object of mockery. What made it worse was that no one around him stepped in, no one thought to correct or challenge the behavior. Their silence became part of the insult, their inaction fueling the arrogance of those who disrespected him. For a black man in a position of power, disrespect often carries layers far deeper than the moment itself. It reflects centuries of stereotypes, prejudices, and assumptions that continue to haunt people of color in professional and social spaces. To be disrespected publicly is to feel, even for a brief moment, that history is being repeated. It is to feel that no matter how high one climbs, there will always be those who try to pull them back down to the level of their own narrow perceptions. The CEO knew this. He felt it in the way their laughter lingered just a little too long, in the way their eyes darted toward him as though he were out of place. They did not see the leader, the strategist, or the visionary. They saw only what they wanted to see, and in their eyes, he was someone unworthy of respect. Disrespect is never about the person receiving it, it is always about the person giving it. It reveals their insecurity, their ignorance, and their fear of being overshadowed. Yet in that moment, standing in front of an audience that had already dismissed him, it would have been easy for him to react. He could have shouted back, confronted them, or exposed who he really was. But that is not how disrespect is best defeated. The true power of responding to public humiliation lies not in anger but in patience, in waiting for the perfect moment to turn the tables. His silence was not weakness, it was control. While they thought their words had reduced him, he was already thinking of how to rise above them in a way that would leave no doubt of who he really was. The pain of public disrespect lingers long after the moment passes. For many, it becomes a memory replayed in their mind, a reminder of how people can underestimate and belittle someone without hesitation. But for this CEO, that moment of disrespect was not the end of the story, it was the spark. Every insult he endured in that room became fuel, every dismissive glance became a reminder of why he had worked so hard to reach where he was. And while others saw only the humiliation of the present moment, he already carried within him the power of his achievements, the strength of his journey, and the unshakable truth that no amount of disrespect could erase his worth. Disrespect in public may feel like defeat in the moment, but it is also an opportunity. It exposes the arrogance of those who believe they are untouchable, and it sets the stage for a powerful reversal. The audience that once laughed can become the same audience that gasps in shock when the truth is revealed. That is the nature of stories like this. Those who choose disrespect never expect the tables to turn. And when they do, the lesson is not just about the person who was disrespected, but about the cruelty of underestimating someone whose strength was never visible on the surface. Silent strength is often misunderstood by those who thrive on noise, arrogance, and showmanship. In a world where many equate power with the loudest voice or the sharpest insult, the ability to remain calm and collected in the face of humiliation is seen as weakness. Yet, in reality, it is one of the greatest demonstrations of control and confidence. When the black CEO faced disrespect, he did not retaliate with raised tones or immediate confrontation. Instead, he chose silence, a silence heavy with meaning. It was not the silence of defeat, but the silence of someone who knows their worth so deeply that no insult can reduce it. It was the silence of a leader who understands that timing and restraint can be more powerful than any outburst. Those who disrespected him failed to recognize this. They mistook his quietness for submission, believing that their cruel words and condescending behavior had pushed him into a corner. They whispered and smirked, convincing themselves they had won the moment. But what they did not see was the strength behind that silence. Every second he stood there without responding was a testament to his discipline. He refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing him lose control. Silent strength does not mean ignoring the pain or pretending the insult didn't hurt, it means feeling the weight of the moment, acknowledging the sting, but refusing to let it dictate one's actions. There is immense power in silence because it forces the aggressors to reveal more of themselves. The louder they became, the more they exposed their insecurity and ignorance. Silence, in contrast, reflects composure and mastery over one's emotions. The black CEO's decision not to respond immediately transformed him from the target of ridicule into an enigma. People began to wonder why he did not speak, why he did not react, why he allowed the disrespect to linger without challenge. In that pause, in that stillness, he gained control of the narrative without even saying a word. Silent strength also comes from perspective. He had faced challenges far greater than the insults of a few arrogant individuals. To reach the level of CEO, especially as a black man in a society riddled with bias, meant he had already endured countless moments of underestimation, prejudice, and exclusion. Each of those experiences had sharpened him, teaching him when to fight back and when to wait. His silence in this moment was not born from fear, it was the wisdom of someone who had learned that revenge served too quickly loses its flavor, but revenge served with patience becomes unforgettable. In silence, there is dignity. It shields a person from descending to the level of those who insult them. Had he shouted back, had he argued, the situation might have escalated into a spectacle, feeding the very arrogance of those who wanted to see him break. Instead, he stood tall, his silence becoming louder than any insult hurled his way. Others watching the scene unfold began to sense something different. They couldn't put their finger on it, but there was something about his composure that didn't match the picture of weakness they were trying to paint. It was as though he carried a secret they had yet to uncover, a hidden truth that would shift everything. Silent strength is not passive, it is active. It is the deliberate choice to hold back, to measure the impact of one's response, and to save it for the moment it will matter most. The CEO's silence was not the absence of reaction but the preparation for a greater revelation. It was the calm before the storm, the stillness that makes the coming wave even more powerful. His silence made his eventual response not just heard but felt. The contrast between their noise and his restraint made the tables turn more dramatically when the truth finally came to light. For many, silence can feel like a loss because it is often confused with inaction. But in his case, silence was strategy. He understood that strength does not always need to announce itself loudly, sometimes it speaks in patience, in restraint, in the ability to smile when provoked and wait for the right moment to show who truly holds the power. His silence was the armor that protected him from being dragged into the mud of petty insults. It was also the sword he would eventually wield, because the impact of revealing his true identity after such silence would be far greater than any quick retort could ever achieve. Silent strength unsettles those who expect weakness. They push harder, speak harsher, and behave more arrogantly, trying to provoke a reaction that never comes. They become frustrated because silence does not give them the satisfaction of victory. In that frustration, they overexpose themselves, making their downfall inevitable. The CEO knew this. He allowed them to dig their own hole with every word, every laugh, every gesture of mockery. His silence was the quiet assurance that their disrespect would not last forever, that the moment of reversal was coming, and when it did, it would be undeniable. Hidden identity revealed is often the turning point in stories where arrogance meets humility and disrespect collides with truth. The black CEO endured the stares, the whispers, and the mockery without revealing who he really was. Those who insulted him saw only what they wanted to see, a man who didn't fit their expectations of power, success, or belonging. They placed him in a box created by their own prejudice, blind to the reality that the very person they tried to belittle was the one who held more influence than anyone else in that room. For him, the power lay not in exposing himself immediately, but in waiting for the perfect moment to let the truth speak louder than any defense he could have given in the heat of the insult. The revelation of hidden identity carries weight because it shatters assumptions in an instant. One moment, he was seen as someone beneath them, someone unworthy of acknowledgement. The next, he stood revealed as the CEO, the man who built an empire, the leader whose decisions shaped futures. The shift was not gradual but immediate, like a spotlight turned on in a dark room. Suddenly, those who laughed felt their faces burn with shame. Their arrogance dissolved into silence, their smirks vanished, and the weight of their disrespect came crashing down on them with the force of undeniable truth. It was in that moment they realized they had mocked not just a man but their superior, someone whose achievements dwarfed their shallow judgments. Revealing his identity was not about revenge alone, it was about reclaiming the dignity they tried to strip from him. For as long as they believed him to be insignificant, they thought they had the power. They reveled in it, enjoying the feeling of superiority, but the truth had always been there, hidden beneath his quiet presence. The CEO carried his success with humility, never needing to flaunt it or prove it in meaningless exchanges. Yet when the time came to reveal who he was, his identity became the weapon that turned their laughter into silence. The power dynamic flipped instantly, not because he had shouted them down, but because the truth made their disrespect indefensible. Moments like this are powerful because they reveal how fragile arrogance truly is. Those who judged him felt secure in their assumptions, confident that they understood who he was. But their certainty was built on nothing more than ignorance and prejudice. When the truth surfaced, it destroyed the foundation of their confidence. They were left scrambling, embarrassed not just by what they had done, but by how wrong they had been about him from the very beginning. The exposure of their ignorance became part of the punishment, for the revelation of hidden identity does not just elevate the one disrespected, it diminishes those who disrespected him in the eyes of everyone who witnessed the exchange. The hidden identity was more than just a professional title. It represented the journey he had walked, the sacrifices he had made, and the strength it took to rise to the position he held. By hiding it until the right moment, he reminded everyone that true worth is not determined by appearances or assumptions but by achievements and character. Those who saw him as unworthy had overlooked the deeper truth that greatness often hides in plain sight, unseen by those who are too blind with pride to recognize it. His revelation forced them to confront their own biases and to realize how easily prejudice can cloud judgment. The silence that followed his revelation was louder than the insults that had come before. No apology could erase what had been said, and no excuse could justify the way they had treated him. His identity, once revealed, made every word they had spoken a reflection of their own ignorance. They were not just guilty of disrespecting a man, they were guilty of disrespecting the very values they claimed to stand for: professionalism, equality, and respect. The exposure left them vulnerable, stripped of the false power they had wielded only moments before. The impact of hidden identity revealed is not only felt in the room where it happens but far beyond it. Stories like these spread quickly, because people are fascinated by the dramatic reversal of fortune. The man who was laughed at becomes the hero, and those who mocked him become examples of arrogance destroyed by truth. The CEO's revelation resonated so strongly because it was not simply about his victory, it was about every person who has ever been underestimated, dismissed, or disrespected. His story became theirs, a reminder that identity and power are not always visible at first glance, and that those who judge too quickly often end up judged themselves. The CEO's hidden identity was his greatest strength because it gave him the ability to control the moment of truth. He could have exposed himself earlier, but waiting until after the disrespect allowed the revelation to carry maximum impact. It turned a moment of humiliation into a moment of triumph, transforming the narrative from one of weakness to one of strength. His hidden identity was like a card held close to the chest, revealed only when the time was right, and when it was shown, it silenced every insult, every whisper, every sneer. It was not just a revelation, it was a reckoning. Power of dignity is something that cannot be stolen, even in the face of insult or humiliation. Dignity is not about what others think of you, it is about how you choose to carry yourself when the world tries to strip you of respect. When the black CEO was disrespected, he stood firm, not lowering himself to the level of those who mocked him. He did not need to shout, argue, or seek validation from anyone in that room. His strength came from his ability to uphold his dignity, to maintain self-control, and to show that true power lies in character, not in cruelty. The power of dignity shines brightest when it is tested. Anyone can appear calm when they are admired, but it takes an unshakable will to remain composed when people treat you with disdain. The CEO understood that losing his composure would mean giving away his power. By choosing to keep his dignity intact, he reminded everyone watching that respect is not begged for, it is commanded by the way a person conducts themselves. His quiet confidence unsettled those who mocked him because it did not match the reaction they expected. They wanted anger, they wanted outrage, they wanted to see him fall apart under their disrespect, but instead they saw calmness, and that calmness was more powerful than any retaliation. Dignity transforms the way insults are perceived. When someone reacts with rage, the insult gains strength because it provokes chaos. But when someone stands with dignity, the insult bounces back to the one who delivered it, exposing their smallness. The CEO's calmness in the face of public disrespect was a mirror, reflecting the arrogance and ignorance of those who mocked him. His dignity made their cruelty look cheap and petty, highlighting the difference between a man of vision and people trapped in shallow prejudice. That quiet strength made the room feel different. Others who might have stayed silent began to sense that the story was not what it appeared to be. There is also power in dignity because it cannot be bought or faked. Titles, money, and influence can come and go, but dignity is tied to a person's inner character. It is built over time, through discipline and through the ability to endure hardship without losing self-respect. The CEO's journey to success had already demanded this kind of strength. He had faced rejection, bias, and obstacles that could have broken him, but each time, he chose to rise with dignity rather than bitterness. That same choice appeared again in this moment of disrespect. Instead of reacting in a way that would diminish him, he elevated himself by showing that his worth was never tied to the shallow opinions of others. Dignity also inspires those who witness it. When people see someone humiliated but refusing to be shaken, they feel a sense of admiration. It challenges them to think about how they themselves might react in such a situation. The CEO's composure became a silent lesson to everyone in the room. It reminded them that greatness is not loud or boastful but steady and unyielding. His dignity turned him into an example, not just for those present, but for anyone who would later hear his story. It became clear that power is not always in the titles or in the wealth someone possesses, it is in how they face moments of adversity without compromising their values. Those who disrespected him failed to understand that dignity is a shield. They thought their words could wound him, but in reality, their insults never pierced through his composure. His dignity protected him from their attempts to belittle him, because he refused to give them the power to define him. At the same time, his dignity became a weapon, turning their behavior into a display of their own weakness. The more they mocked, the stronger his presence appeared. The contrast between their smallness and his restraint grew sharper with every passing second. The power of dignity also lies in its ability to turn revenge into something greater than personal satisfaction. For many, revenge means striking back, delivering pain equal to the pain received. But the CEO's dignity transformed his revenge into a lesson. By holding on to his self-respect, he ensured that when the truth of his identity was finally revealed, the impact would be tenfold. His dignity gave weight to the revelation, making it not just a moment of personal victory but a moment of universal significance. People were not just witnessing a man who had been disrespected, they were witnessing a man who had faced disrespect with honor and then revealed the undeniable truth of who he was. Maintaining dignity in the face of disrespect is one of the hardest tests a person can face. It requires patience, restraint, and the ability to see beyond the present moment. The CEO's choice to remain dignified showed his understanding that revenge is most powerful when it is grounded in self-respect. Without dignity, revenge becomes shallow, a mere exchange of anger. With dignity, revenge becomes transformative, forcing others to confront their mistakes and their prejudices in a way they cannot escape. The CEO's dignity in that moment became a force greater than the insults aimed at him. It was not just about personal pride, but about showing that true leadership is measured not by how loudly someone speaks, but by how calmly they endure and how wisely they act. His dignity gave him authority without words, respect without pleading, and power without aggression. It was this quiet, unshakable dignity that would ultimately define the story, leaving those who disrespected him exposed and those who witnessed it inspired. Revenge with impact is not about chaos, shouting, or violence, it is about timing, precision, and the ability to turn humiliation into a moment that no one will forget. The black CEO had endured the sting of disrespect, the mockery, the dismissive looks, and the arrogance of those who thought they knew who he was. He had stayed silent, held his dignity, and allowed the moment to build without revealing his hand too soon. His revenge was not reckless, it was calculated. He waited until the weight of their cruelty reached its peak, and then he chose to strike in a way that would leave an impression so deep it could not be erased. Revenge with impact is not about proving someone wrong in the moment, but about creating a moment so powerful that it reshapes the way people think forever. The impact of his revenge began with the revelation of truth. When he finally revealed who he was, the energy in the room shifted instantly. Those who had mocked him suddenly felt the heat of their own shame. Their arrogance collapsed beneath the undeniable reality of his success and power. His revenge was not delivered in anger but in truth, and truth always carries more weight than insults. By choosing to let the truth reveal itself at the right time, he turned their laughter into silence, their superiority into humiliation, and their disrespect into a public display of ignorance. The impact was magnified because it was not just about him winning, it was about them losing in front of everyone who had witnessed their cruelty. Revenge with impact works because it exposes the flaws of those who believe they can disrespect others without consequence. The CEO's strategy was not to shout them down or to retaliate in a way that could be dismissed as overreaction. Instead, he let them build their own downfall. Every insult they threw became part of the trap they didn't know they were walking into. By the time the truth was revealed, their words no longer hurt him, they condemned them. The audience no longer saw him as the victim of mockery but as the victor who had endured with grace and then revealed a truth that turned the entire situation upside down. There is also an emotional weight in revenge with impact. It is not just about changing the way the offenders feel, but about reaching everyone who witnesses the moment. His revenge went viral because people connected with it. They saw themselves in his story. They thought of times they had been underestimated, disrespected, or mocked, and they found satisfaction in watching the arrogant fall. The impact stretched beyond the walls of the room. The story spread because it was not just about one man's revenge, it was about justice, about dignity triumphing over arrogance, about silence and patience leading to a powerful revelation. His revenge became symbolic, a reminder that those who disrespect others based on shallow judgments will eventually face consequences. What made his revenge impactful was the way it balanced restraint with revelation. If he had revealed himself too soon, the lesson would have been weaker. If he had reacted with anger, it might have been dismissed as conflict. But by waiting, by enduring, and then by calmly showing the truth, he created a dramatic reversal that left a lasting mark. His revenge was not loud, but it echoed far. It reminded everyone watching that true power does not need to scream, it simply waits for the right moment to reveal itself. The silence before the revelation made the impact stronger, the calmness of his response made it unforgettable, and the weight of truth made it undeniable. Revenge with impact also shifts the balance of power permanently. The people who disrespected him would never look at him, or anyone else, the same way again. They learned that appearances can be deceiving, that arrogance can be dangerous, and that underestimating someone based on prejudice can lead to humiliation. The CEO's revenge did not just correct the moment, it rewrote the story. Those who had laughed at him would forever be remembered not for their superiority but for their mistake. His revenge imprinted itself on their reputation, a reminder they would carry long after the moment had passed. The beauty of revenge with impact is that it transforms pain into power. The insult that was meant to reduce him became the very stage for his triumph. Their attempt to humiliate him gave him the perfect opportunity to reveal who he really was. What they thought was their victory became his platform. The impact of his revenge lay in this transformation, turning their cruelty into his strength, turning their disrespect into his lesson, turning their arrogance into their downfall. It was poetic, because the very moment they tried to destroy his dignity became the moment that elevated it. Revenge, when done with impact, leaves no need for further explanation. It speaks for itself. The CEO's silence, his patience, his dignity, and his revelation created a story that traveled far beyond the people who witnessed it in person. It became a story told again and again because of the way it resonated with universal truths about respect, justice, and power. The impact of his revenge was not only in humiliating those who disrespected him but in inspiring countless others who saw in him the possibility of rising above insult and letting truth deliver the final blow. His revenge was not measured in anger or noise but in the silence that turned into revelation. It was measured in the stunned faces of those who had mocked him, in the whispers that turned to silence, and in the story that spread across the world. Revenge with impact is about patience, timing, and the courage to let the truth strike harder than any words ever could. Viral global lesson emerges when a single act of resilience, patience, and truth transcends the moment in which it happens and begins to ripple outward, reaching people far beyond the original audience. The Black CEO's story of being disrespected and responding with dignity before revealing his true identity carried all the elements of a narrative that the world could not ignore. It began as a private incident of mockery, but the way he handled it transformed it into a universal message about respect, equality, and the danger of underestimating others. In a society hungry for stories that expose arrogance and celebrate justice, his experience resonated so deeply that it traveled across borders, cultures, and communities, becoming more than just a personal victory. The viral aspect of this lesson came from the dramatic reversal of power. People are drawn to stories where the oppressed rise above, where the underestimated reveal their true strength, and where those who wield arrogance are brought low by their own ignorance. The CEO's story contained all of this. The disrespect he endured mirrored the experiences of countless individuals who have been judged unfairly, while his calm response and eventual revelation created the satisfying conclusion people crave. It was the kind of story that demanded to be shared, not just because it was dramatic, but because it carried meaning. Every retelling reinforced the idea that appearances can deceive, that dignity is stronger than cruelty, and that justice often arrives when least expected. The global lesson within this story was about respect as a universal value. No matter the culture, background, or country, respect is something that all people desire and deserve. Disrespect based on race, status, or assumption is not confined to one part of the world, it is a human failing that many have experienced. This is why his story reached so far. It gave voice to the frustrations of people everywhere who have felt invisible or underestimated. Watching someone stand strong, keep their dignity, and then turn the tables with undeniable truth gave hope and validation to millions. It became more than entertainment. It became a reminder of how one act of patience and self-control can teach a lesson to the entire world. The lesson also carried weight because of the viral nature of modern storytelling. In the past, such an incident might have remained confined to the room where it happened, remembered only by those who witnessed it directly. But in today's interconnected world, stories like these spread instantly, amplified by social media and global news. The viral spread of his story magnified its power, allowing it to reach people who had never met him, who lived in different countries, but who immediately connected with the emotions it stirred. The humiliation he endured, the silence he maintained, the revelation of truth, and the reversal of power all formed a narrative that transcended language and culture. It became a shared lesson in humanity, told in countless posts, videos, and articles. At its core, the viral global lesson was about patience and timing. Many people live in societies where immediate reactions dominate, where anger often meets insult. But the CEO showed a different way. His refusal to retaliate instantly, his decision to remain dignified, and his choice to reveal his identity only at the right moment created an unforgettable story. It taught that silence can be stronger than noise, that dignity can outshine arrogance, and that truth revealed at the right time is more powerful than any confrontation. The world took note of this lesson because it challenged common instincts and showed the value of restraint and wisdom. Another layer of the lesson was the exposure of prejudice. The incident highlighted how quickly people can judge based on superficial markers like skin color, dress, or perceived status. By revealing himself as the CEO, he forced not only the individuals who disrespected him but also everyone who heard the story to reflect on their own biases. How often do people dismiss others without knowing their story? How many opportunities for respect and connection are lost because of arrogance or prejudice? His story went viral not just because of the satisfaction of revenge, but because it made people confront uncomfortable truths about themselves and their societies. The global audience was captivated because the lesson spoke to both personal and societal struggles. On a personal level, it gave individuals strength to endure disrespect with patience and confidence in their worth. On a societal level, it highlighted the urgent need to confront inequality, discrimination, and the dangers of judging by appearance. It showed how deeply injustice still runs, but also how powerfully it can be overturned when handled with wisdom and composure. This dual relevance, personal and collective, helped the story spread like wildfire, turning one man's moment into a worldwide conversation. The viral nature of the lesson also meant it became a source of inspiration. Many who read or watched the story did not just view it as entertainment but as motivation. It became a reminder that setbacks, insults, and disrespect do not have to define a person's story. The CEO's example showed that even in the face of humiliation, there is a way to rise above without losing self-respect. His revenge was not just about teaching a lesson to those who mocked him, but about giving a lesson to everyone who heard his story. It inspired people to carry themselves with dignity, to wait for the right moment to reveal their truth, and to understand that the world is always watching how one responds to adversity. The viral global lesson proved that the power of one act can extend far beyond its original setting. A moment of silence, a choice to remain dignified, and a revelation of truth created a ripple effect that turned into a wave. The CEO's story became a mirror for the world, reflecting not only the cruelty of prejudice but also the strength of dignity, patience, and justice. It was proof that revenge, when carried out with wisdom and restraint, does more than satisfy, it educates, it inspires, and it changes perspectives across the globe.